Well, it is fall, and I love this time of year. It's one of my favorite times. You can see God's beauty all over the place. Even this morning, as I was driving into the office, I saw one of the biggest sunrises that I think I've ever seen, and it just gave me reason to give thanks, to give God praise and thanks for His beauty. And, it reminds me that it really doesn't require that much time from us to take just a little bit of time to give God praise and appreciate His beauty. Fall's a great season to do this, and as I go around our neighborhood, I see all the typical decorations of fall, usually around people's front doors. I'm seeing hay bales and straw and pumpkins and gourds and turkeys and scarecrows. Scarecrows crack me up. The purpose of a scarecrow is, of course, to frighten annoying and pesky crows from picking a cornfield clean. And the idea is that these birds are stupid enough to fly over a field and see the scarecrow and think that it's the farmer, playing the part, of course, guarding his corn, and so they fly away. Now, I'm no farmer, but I assume that for a lot of years now, this idea has worked really well. Otherwise, we wouldn't have scarecrows. In your worship ministry, have you ever thought about yourself as a scarecrow? In other words, do you play the part of a worshiper, hoping that the congregation will be stupid enough to not notice the lack of authenticity? A phrase we might attach to this would be just going through the motions. I'm sure we've all done it. Have you ever played a scarecrow on stage? I can't count how many times my mind has wandered away from the Lord as I'm serving His people, and every once in a while I'll feel the nudging of God's Holy Spirit in those moments saying, "Wake up, dummy, you're in God's presence." This reminds me of Jacob when he was dreaming in a city called Luz. Genesis chapter 28, verses 15 to 19 records the end of his dream and then the response to his dream. Verse 15, it starts with God saying this, "I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. And I'll bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. See, Jacob changed the name of this place. He gives it the name House of God. God was dwelling there, and Jacob didn't know it. Have you had those moments in worship? You're like a scarecrow on stage, playing the part of a worshiper, when all of a sudden you wake up. You wake up to the reality of God's presence. All of a sudden, you change into a true worshiper. What is it that makes that change? I'm going to propose there are two things that we can do to make that change. Awareness and authenticity. Awareness and authenticity. Awareness. This is mindfulness to the moment. Awareness is mindfulness to the moment. Now, I've been preparing and leading worship weekly for about 25 years, and I fully get the limitations of my own brain. Sometimes my brain has to focus on the chords. Sometimes my brain has to focus on the next lyric. Sometimes my brain has to focus on how am I going to navigate to the video clip. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't consider those moments as acts of worship. I'm just saying that I know how our minds can wander to things that are completely disconnected from God, completely disconnected from His praise, and completely disconnected from His people. So just be aware in those moments. In those moments, call your brain back. Call your brain back to the reality of worship, the collision of God's presence and His people. That's awareness, just being mindful in the moment. Call your brain back. And the second thing is authenticity. This is being true in real time. Authenticity is being true in real time. That means that from moment to moment, we recalibrate our hearts so that we can honestly say we're being true and transparent before God and before His people. Sometimes we have to do this many times as we lead in worship. This is in part mindfulness to a moment, but it's also engaging your heart toward God whenever you feel it drifting. And I've found that the thing that helps me most in this is a posture of gratitude. When my heart is drifting from God, All I need to do in those moments on a Sunday morning is just to look up and remember the privilege that it is to be in God's presence as I sing, as I lead people in God's praise. This brings me to give thanks, and my heart is recalibrated. I believe that this is a way that I can lead with authenticity. So I want us to make sure that we are not scarecrows on stage. Let's make sure that we're serving in our various roles, even if your role is never on the stage at all. Let's make sure that we're serving with awareness and authenticity. And I want to close with this question. What are some ways that you have practiced awareness and authenticity? I've just mentioned a couple. What are some ways that you have practiced awareness and authenticity? Think about it and share that with others on your team. Just a thought for you this week.